So you're telling me you want to die? Admiral Marcus Thorne's voice rang out, a cold, almost amused undertone curling through the question. The bridge of the UES Vindication was silent as the grave, except for the faint hum of the starship's power core resonating through the floor. The crew, a hand-picked team of Earth's finest military men, kept their eyes locked forward, showing no sign that they had heard the conversation unfolding. But they had, and every one of them knew that Thorne wasn't bluffing. On the massive view screen at the front of the bridge, the image of an alien ambassador flickered. Its tall, Seti form was covered in slick, Chanis armor, its many eyes blinking in unsettling synchronization. The ambassador, representing the Qatar Dominion, had the arrogance typical of a species that had never known defeat. We demand your unconditional surrender. Human, the Qatar Dominion will not tolerate further delays. You have 3 standard cycles to comply, or your world will be annihilated. Thorne leaned back in his command chair, a slow smile creeping onto his face. His hand moved lazily, almost bored, to the hollow projector beside him, where a galaxy map spun in 3 dimensions. He tapped it, zooming in on a region filled with red markers, every one of them a Qatar warship blotting out the stars. The numbers were staggering. Thousands of capital ships, each capable of burning a planet's surface to glass. Let me get this straight, Thorne began, his voice cool. You think we're going to just roll over and let you take Earth? You think that you can make threats and scare us into submission? The Qatar ambassador hissed, a sound that was supposed to convey superiority. But Thorne only heard desperation. You are outnumbered. Your technology is inferior. Resistance is illogical. You cannot win. Thorne chuckled, low and dangerous. Outnumbered, but inferior. He stood up from his chair, crossing his arms as he approached the view screen. You've been monitoring us for how long? A decade? 2? And you still don't get it? A moment of silence stretched thin across the bridge, and the ambassador's many eyes blinked out of sync for the first time. Thorne let the silence linger, knowing it would unnerve the alien more than anything he could say. Then, he broke it with a single word: war. The ambassador shifted, clearly uncertain. Explain, it said. Thorne's smile widened, not the smile of a man on the edge of defeat, but of someone who had already won. You've seen our ships, our weapons, our tactics, and do you think that's all we've got? But here's the thing about humans. We don't just fight wars. We become war. The ambassador recoiled slightly, sensing the shift in tone but unable to fully comprehend its implications. Thorne continued, his voice rising in intensity, the air on the bridge crackling with his resolve. You've seen a glimpse of our power. You think our technology is primitive because we don't rely on the same toys you do. But you've never pushed us to the brink. You've never forced us to fight for our survival, with no other option but total victory or extinction. Thorne paused, his eyes gleaming with a fire that no alien could understand. You're about to find out what happens when humanity is pushed to that edge. You want war? We'll give you war, and when we're done, there won't be enough of your species left to fill a single escape pod. The ambassador's composure slipped, a flicker of fear evident in its alien eyes. This is your final warning. Human. Surrender, or be destroyed. Thorne tilted his head, as if considering the offer for the first time. Then, with a suddenness that made even his crew jump, he slammed his fist down on the hollow projector, shattering the image of the Qatar fleet. Go ahead, make your move, and when you do, you'll see just how wrong you are. The connection severed, and the view screen went dark. Thorne turned back to his crew, who were now watching him with a mixture of anticipation and awe. He was a man who had just promised the impossible, to take on an entire alien armada with a single fleet and win. Prepare the ship, Thorne ordered, his voice calm but carrying the weight of iron. We're taking the fight to them. Captain Ryder, Thorne's second in command, a tall, rugged man with more combat scars than most soldiers had years of service, stepped forward. Orders, sir. Thorne didn't hesitate. We're going to show them what it means to fight a human war. Get the hyperdrive spinning up. I want every gun loaded, every fighter prepped, and every soldier ready. We're going straight into the heart of their fleet. Ryder nodded, a fierce grin splitting his face. Aye, sir. We'll be ready. As the crew began their preparations, the lights on the bridge dimmed slightly, a sign that the ship was transitioning to combat mode. The men moved with purpose, their faces hard with determination. Every movement precise and deliberate. They knew what they were up against, and they knew the odds were stacked against them. But they also knew something else, that Admiral Thorne had never lost a fight in his life. The hum of the hyperdrive grew louder, a deep, resonant thrum that reverberated through the ship. Thorne could feel it in his bones, the power, the potential, the promise of violence to come. He took his seat again, fingers drumming on the armrest as he surveyed the scene before him. This was what he lived for, not the politics, not the negotiations, but the pure, unadulterated chaos of battle. The moment when everything was on the line and there was no turning back. "Let's remind these aliens why they should fear us," Thorne said, his voice quiet but filled with a lethal resolve. "We're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for the right to exist, and we're going to make damn sure they never forget it." The Vindication shuddered slightly as the hyperdrive engaged, the stars outside the viewport stretching into long, thin lines of light as the ship accelerated to faster-than-light speeds. In seconds, they would be at the edge of the Qatar Armada, and the war that had been brewing for years would finally begin in earnest. Thorne leaned forward, his eyes locked on the view screen as the countdown to reversion ticked down. The AR thought they knew humanity, thought they could scare them into submission. But they were about to learn the hardest lesson of all. Humans didn't just survive, they thrived in the face of adversity. And when pushed to the brink, they were the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "Brace yourselves, gentlemen," Thorne said, a deadly calm settling over him. "This is going to be one hell of a fight." The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and the Qatar fleet appeared on the screen, a massive wall of ships stretching across the void. Thorne's smile never wavered as he gave the order, "All batteries, fire at will." The first barrage erupted from the Vindication, guns streaking across the blackness of space toward the enemy fleet. It was a declaration, not just of war, but of intent. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a statement, a promise that the Qatar had made the worst mistake of their existence because they had underestimated humanity. And now, they would pay the price. The Vindication shook as the first volleys of plasma fire slammed into its shields. Thorne barely noticed the tremors as he watched the tactical display on the view screen. The Qatar fleet had reacted with alarming speed, turning their attention to the lone human battleship that had just emerged from hyperspace. Thousands of enemy ships began to close in, forming a net designed to overwhelm and crush their solitary adversary. "Shields holding at 90%, Lieutenant Harris reported from the engineering console. His voice clipped but controlled. Thorne nodded. "Keep them steady. Divert all non-essential power to the forward deflectors. We're going straight through them." Ryder was at his side, his eyes glued to the rapidly changing battlefield on the screen. "They're moving to encircle us, sir. If we get caught in that net, it's going to be a massacre." Thorne's grin was wolfish. "Only if they can close the trap. Helm, full speed ahead. Plot a course straight through the center of their formation." The crew hesitated for a fraction of a second. Only a madman would charge headlong into the heart of an enemy fleet. But Thorne's reputation had been built on exactly this kind of audacity. He didn't wait for the crew to catch up to his thinking. He trusted that they would execute. Of course now, the Vindication surged forward, its massive engines roaring to life. The inertial dampeners strained to keep up as the ship accelerated to maximum combat speed, hurtling towards the thickest part of the Qatar formation. The enemy, clearly unprepared for such a brazen maneuver, scrambled to adjust their positions. "They're repositioning their heavy cruisers to intercept," Ryder warned, his voice taut with anticipation. "Good," Thorne replied, his eyes narrowing. "That's exactly what we want. Gunnery, prepare to fire torpedoes on my mark. I want those cruisers disabled before they know what hit them." As the Vindication streaked toward the enemy lines, the tactical display lit up with a barrage of incoming fire. Plasma bolts, ion beams, and kinetic slugs all converged on the human battleship, a deadly storm of energy designed to obliterate anything in its path. But Thorne had planned for this. Evasive maneuvers, pattern Delta 7. Keep them guessing. The ship weaved and darted through the incoming fire, its advanced thrusters pushing it to the limits of its design. The Vindication was no ordinary vessel. It was a prototype, a culmination of Earth's most cutting-edge technology. And it was in the hands of a man who knew exactly how to use it. Now, Thorne barked, and the ship's forward batteries unleashed a devastating salvo of torpedoes. The projectiles reeked toward the enemy cruisers, slipping through the gaps in their shields and detonating with pinpoint accuracy. The explosions lit up the void, ripping through hulls and sending shockwaves that disrupted the Qatar formation. Direct hits on their forward cruisers, Harris reported, his voice tinged with excitement. They're losing cohesion. Thorne allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Good. Let's keep him off balance. Helm, bring us around for another pass. Gunnery, target their command ships. Cut off the head, and the body will fall. As the Vindication turned for its next attack run, the Qatar fleet began to falter. Thorne could see it in their movements, the hesitation, the uncertainty. They had come expecting an easy victory, a chance to demonstrate their dominance over a lesser species. Instead, they were facing an opponent who refused to back down, who fought with a ferocity and ingenuity they had never encountered. Incoming transmission from the Qatar flagship, Ryder announced. On screen, Thorne ordered. The image of the Qatar ambassador reappeared, its arrogance replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. Human, you are outmatched. Surrender now, and we may yet spare your world. Thorne leaned forward, his expression hard as steel. You're right about one thing. We're outmatched. But if you think for a second that means we're going to surrender, then you really don't understand what you're up against. The ambassador's eyes flickered with unease. This is madness. You cannot win. Thorne's smile was razor sharp. Maybe not, but we can make damn sure you never forget us. The transmission cut out, and Thorne turned back to his crew. Let's finish this. Show them what happens when you push humanity too far. The battle raged on, and the Vindication became a beacon of defiance. A single ship holding its own against an entire armada. And as the Qatar fleet began to crumble under the relentless assault, one thing became clear. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would fight, and they would endure, no matter the odds. Because that was what it meant to be human.